What do you do when your family abandons you after a life-changing accident? Lily had spent years holding everything together for her family, sacrificing her own happiness to ensure they were taken care of. But when a tragic car accident left her hospitalized, her family didn't come to support her instead. They took the vacation Lily had planned for them, leaving her to face the pain alone. But this time, Lily was done being the afterthought. Stay tuned to see how Lily takes control of her life and how her family reacts to the consequences of their actions. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, eye-opening stories. My name is Lily, and I never thought I'd be the one holding everything together. At 27, most people my age are busy chasing their careers or figuring out what they want from life. But here I am, managing my own life while also paying for nearly everything my family needs. Lily, honey, Pius's therapy bill came in today. My mom's voice crackled through the phone. It was the same conversation we'd been having for months. I know you've already helped so much, but... She trailed off. I sighed, pulling up my banking app while holding the phone between my ear and shoulder. How much this time, Mom? How we got here? It's a simple story, but living it hasn't been easy. My sister Rose, 3 years older than me, had what my mom calls a career setback a year ago. That's the nice version. The truth is, Rose had a complete breakdown when she didn't get the promotion she'd worked for. Instead of handling it like an adult, she quit on the spot, burning bridges faster than a wildfire. I can't believe they picked Ashley over me, Rose had sobbed into my shoulder that day. Do you know how long I've worked there? How hard I've tried? I remember sitting in my new apartment, the one I was so proud to rent after graduating, listening to her rant. I thought she'd calm down in a few weeks, maybe even find a better job. But that's not what happened. 7 months passed while she processed everything, and another 7 months of only applying to certain jobs. That's how my parents explained her unemployment. Meanwhile, I was the one making sure the bills got paid, that there was food in the fridge, and that Rose could still see her therapist 4 times a week. The therapy is really helping her, Mom would say as I transferred another chunk of my paycheck to their account. She's making progress. Progress? From where I stood, I only saw more money slipping from my bank account. I saw my sister sitting around at our childhood home, scrolling through job listings that asked for the impossible: 5-day weekends and unlimited vacation. Meanwhile, I was working overtime at my marketing job, taking on extra clients, and barely finding time to breathe. This past year had been exhausting for all of us. I could see the stress on my parents, too. Mom's face had more worry lines, and Dad's shoulders slumped lower each time Rose turned down another job for not being good enough. Looking at my tired parents, I knew we all needed something to look forward to. That's when I started planning a trip to Paris just for the 3 of us. I spent weeks planning every detail: the perfect hotel, private tours, and experiences just for them. A cheese tasting tour for Mom. She'd always dreamed of trying real Italian cheese. A vineyard and wine tour for Dad. He loved a good glass of red. I thought this trip would be perfect, a chance for us to forget the stress and create happy memories. I imagined us walking along the Trastevere, sharing wine at cozy cafes, and finally seeing my parents smile again, free from worry. But life can change in an instant. One moment I was driving to meet a client, thinking about my presentation and our trip the next day. The next, there was a loud crash, the screech of metal, then nothing. I don't remember much about the accident, just flashes. Sirens, paramedics talking, bright lights overhead. When I fully woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My entire body ached like one giant bruise. The doctor said I needed emergency surgery, but it had gone well. Still, I wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. You're very lucky, a nurse told me as she adjusted my IV. The airbag saved you from the worst of it, but that other car hit you hard. I was still groggy when my parents and Rose walked into the room. Mom was holding her favorite travel purse, the one she bought just for the Paris trip. Seeing it made my stomach drop. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice scratchy from the breathing tube. We'll have to postpone the trip. Don't worry, I'll cancel everything today and we can go when I'm better. I expected them to be understanding, maybe even a little disappointed, but still supportive. But what happened next? I wasn't ready for. Instead of comfort, my mom spoke in an oddly calm voice. "Oh, there's no need to cancel anything, honey." I blinked, sure that the painkillers were making me hear things wrong. "What your dad and I have been talking—" "Mom," she said, adjusting her purse strap. "We think we should still go. You can rest here and we'll take Rose with us instead." Her words hit me harder than the car that crashed into me. I stared at them, waiting for someone to say it was a joke. "Rose has been through a lot this year," Mom added, patting my sister's shoulder. "She really needs this break, too." Rose stepped forward. "You are supposed to watch the house while we were gone," she said. "Since you can't, you'll need to hire someone. Make sure they're reliable." I lay there, my mouth open, unable to speak. This couldn't be real. My own family was standing there talking about their vacation while I was lying in a hospital bed less than a day after major surgery. Then they actually waved and walked out, leaving me alone with the steady beep of the heart monitor and the painful realization that they had just abandoned me for a trip I had planned and paid for. I lay in bed for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. The pain meds couldn't dull the ache in my chest, the one that had nothing to do with my injuries. "They didn't even ask how I was feeling," I whispered to myself. "Not about the surgery, not about the accident. Not about anything." A nurse passed by for the third time, probably noticing my heart rate going up on the monitor. She stopped in the doorway, concern on her face. "Everything okay, honey? Your numbers are a bit high." "My phone," I said, suddenly remembering. "Could you please get my phone? It should be with my things." A few minutes later, she returned with a plastic hospital bag. My hands shook slightly as I pulled out my phone, relieved to see it wasn't damaged. The screen lit up with my old background, a Christmas picture of me and my parents. I quickly changed it to the default wallpaper. "At least something survived the crash," I muttered. Then I opened my email app. There it was, my Paris trip folder, full of all the confirmations and plans I had worked so hard on. I stared at it for a moment. "Well," I said to myself, my fingers hovering over the first email, "if they want to treat me like a travel agent instead of a daughter, I'll act like one." And one by one, I started canceling everything. One by one. First, the hotel. A few clicks, and the beautiful suite with a view of the Municipio 9 was gone. Next, all the private tours. Mom's cheese tour canceled, Dad's wine tour gone, the private guide for the Pry, the evening cruise on the Trast, the Skip, the Line, Municipio 9 passes. I canceled them all. With each cancellation, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness, yes, because I had dreamed of enjoying these experiences with my parents, but also something else. Not exactly satisfaction, but maybe justice. They treated my accident as an inconvenience. They chose to take Rose, who hadn't worked or contributed to anything in a year, on a trip that I paid for while I lay in a hospital bed. The last thing left to cancel was their return flight. I stared at the confirmation for a long moment before clicking the button. A small, petty part of me wondered how they'd react when they realized they had to figure out their own way home. Once everything was canceled, I put my phone on silent, placed it face down on the bedside table, and closed my eyes. They'd figured out soon enough. Maybe somewhere over the Atlantic, they'd realize that actions have consequences, even in families. Maybe when they landed in Paris with no hotel, no tours, and no flight home, they'd finally understand what it feels like to be abandoned and left to figure things out alone. The first message came at 3:25 a.m. They must have just arrived in Paris and gone to check into the hotel. My phone lit up on the table, buzzing silently. Despite the pain in my ribs, I smiled a little. By breakfast, I had 15 missed calls. By lunch, 40. The messages started piling up too. I kept a little tally on the back of my hospital meal menu just for fun. Missed calls. Mom, 25. Dad, 18. Rose, 48. Text messages, 50 and counting. Voicemails, 21. I smirked. Let's see what's so urgent that they blow up a hospital patient's phone. When the count passed 51, I finally picked up my phone, wincing as I moved. Rose's messages were the first to appear. How could you be so cruel and selfish? We're standing in the hotel lobby with nowhere to go. You're absolutely heartless. Then, Mom. Lily, I am so disappointed in you. This isn't how we treat family. We've never done anything like this to each other before. I don't understand why you're doing this to us, your parents. I stared at the screen, shaking my head. Now they wanted to talk about family? I couldn't help but laugh, despite the sharp pain in my stitches. We've never done anything like this to each other before? Really? What about leaving your injured daughter in the hospital to go on a vacation you'd paid for? Dad's messages were short, but they hit just as hard. Call now. Fix this immediately. Your mother is crying. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages popped up faster than I could read them. The hotel won't let us check in. Where are our tour reservations? What do you mean you canceled the return flights? Answer your phone right now. I was reading a particularly nasty message from Rose, accusing me of ruining everything, when Dr. Olivier walked in, his face serious. Miss Wilson, your phone has been ringing nonstop for hours. This is a hospital, not a call center. We need a quiet environment for all our patients. My face flushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry, doctor, it's just... Without thinking, I found myself explaining everything. The accident, the Paris trip I had planned, how my family reacted, and how I canceled everything. He listened intently, his expression darkening with concern. Then my phone rang again. My mom's name flashed across the screen. Without a word, Dr. Olivier picked it up. Hello, this is Dr. Olivier from Memorial Hospital. I need to ask you to stop calling. Your daughter needs rest and is about to have a second surgery. Even from across the room, I could hear Mom's sharp voice through the speaker. I don't care about any operation. Put my daughter on the phone right now. She needs to fix what she did to us. Dr. Olivier's face went through a series of emotions. First shock, then disbelief, followed by anger. He hung up without saying another word. I'll be keeping this until after your surgery, he said firmly, slipping my phone into his pocket. You need to focus on healing, not dealing with this. For the next few days, everything blurred into a haze of painkillers and sleep. Without my phone, I had no idea what was happening with my family in Paris. But honestly, the silence felt like a strange kind of healing. But life has a way of surprising you. Knock knock. On my 4th day after surgery, Corrine from marketing peeked into my room. We brought contraband, she whispered with a grin. She and Nick from accounting had snuck in real coffee from the cafe down the street. The next day, Brittany and James from my team showed up with magazines and office gossip. The day after that, my cousin Mary, whom I hadn't seen in months, came by with homemade soup. We've got a schedule worked out, Brittany said, holding up a color-coded spreadsheet on her tablet. Someone from the office will stop by every day. We can't have our best project manager getting lonely. For the first time in a long while, I felt cared for. The tears welled up in my eyes. You guys didn't have to do this. Oh, please. James waved off my protest. After all the times you've helped us out, this is nothing. Even my boss, Mr. Ryan, had called the hospital himself. Lily, don't worry about a thing, he said in his usual gruff voice, though it sounded softer than usual. The accident happened during work hours, so our insurance covers you. You'll get a good payout. It should help with your recovery. And more. On my 5th day without my phone, Dr. Olivier returned and placed it gently on my bedside table. I think you're strong enough to handle this now, he said, but I'd understand if you wanted to leave it off a little longer. I picked it up with trembling hands. Over 125 missed calls, countless texts, dozens of voicemails. I started reading from the beginning, watching how their messages changed over time. The first ones were pleading. Lily, you have to understand our side. We're family. We can work this out. Then came the guilt trips. How could you embarrass us like this? We don't deserve this treatment. And finally, the anger. You won't believe the dump we're staying in, Rose wrote. There are bed bugs. Dad's sleeping on a cot. We hear gunshots at night. Mom's messages were no less dramatic. We can barely afford food. We're eating from street vendors like homeless people. We haven't gone on a single tour or seen anything properly. Is this what you wanted, to make your parents suffer? The latest message was a demand for return tickets home, followed by multiple threats about what would happen if I didn't fix things immediately. I sighed and placed the phone face down on the table just as another knock came at my door. It was Sophie from HR, holding a deck of cards and a bag of cookies she had smuggled in. "Ready to learn poker?" she asked with a grin. I looked at her, then at my phone, and I made a choice. I turned my phone off completely and smiled. "Deal me in." I was actually having a good day when they burst in. My physical therapist had just finished our session, and I felt proud of myself. I had managed to walk a few steps on my own. Then I heard it, the sound of rolling suitcases on the hospital floor. My only warning. Seconds later, they stormed into my room like a hurricane. "How dare you!" Mom's face was red with fury, still in her travel clothes. "How dare you do this to us!" Right behind her, Rose dragged her designer suitcase, eyes blazing. The suitcase Rose was dragging, I had bought it for her last Christmas. Dad stood in the doorway, looking both angry and embarrassed. Nurse Kate, who had been adjusting my IV, quickly stepped between them and my bed. "Lower your voices. This is a hospital, not a circus tent." But they didn't listen. 3 weeks of frustration exploded out of Rose like a burst dam. "She's been here." Rose threw her hands up, motioning around my private hospital room. "Look at her lying in a clean bed, getting 3 meals a day while we suffered." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the painkillers giving me courage, or maybe I had finally had enough. "Suffered?" My voice was quiet but sharp. "Let's talk about suffering, shall we?" The room fell silent. For the past year, I have worked myself to exhaustion paying the bills, buying groceries, covering Rose's therapy sessions while she sat at home turning down perfectly good jobs because they weren't perfect enough. Mom opened her mouth to speak. I raised my hand. Not this time. "I planned this trip as a gift. I spent months organizing everything. I paid for it all with my own money. Then I got into a serious accident, needed emergency surgery, and what did you do? Did you ask how I was feeling? Did you care if I was okay? No. You took Rose, the person who hasn't contributed a single penny to this family in over a year, on my vacation while I lay in a hospital bed." I could see the first flickers of shame on Mom's face, but it didn't last long. "You can afford to go to Paris any time," she snapped. "This might have been our only chance." Yeah. Then Rose, my own sister, delivered the final blow. "Besides, you might have been left disabled after the accident. Then you definitely would have canceled everything. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad we should go while everything was still paid for." The room went dead silent. Even Mom looked shocked. My fingers trembled as I reached for the call button. The speaker crackled. "Security, please. I need 4 people escorted out of my room, and I want them added to the restricted visitors list." "Lily, don't you dare!" Mom started, but it was too late. 3 security guards stepped into the room. "This patient is recovering from major surgery," one of them said firmly. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I watched as they were led away. Mom's angry voice echoed down the hall. Dad's silence said everything. Rose's protests faded as they disappeared from sight. The next day, I did something I should have done months ago. I blocked their numbers, all of them. My finger hovered over Dad's contact for a moment longer than the others, but in the end, his silence had been just as painful as their actions. Then I opened my banking apps. I canceled all the automatic payments I had set up for my family. No more monthly transfers for Rose's therapy. No more paying their utility bills, no more grocery money. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. 3 weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital. When I finally got home, my apartment felt like a sanctuary. My work friends had cleaned it, stocked the fridge, and even put fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. No family drama, no guilt trips, no financial demands, just peace and quiet. I focused on getting better. I did my physical therapy exercises. I started working remotely. Slowly, life fell into a rhythm, one that didn't revolve around fixing my family's problems. Then, about a month after I left the hospital, my phone buzzed with messages from cousins and family friends. Mom had taken her complaints to Facebook. "My own daughter has abandoned us in our time of need," she wrote. After everything we've done for her, she has turned her back on her poor, struggling parents. Rose can't find work, bills are piling up, and Lily won't even return our calls. Some of her friends who didn't know the truth quickly jumped in to comfort her. How terrible! After raising such an ungrateful child, family should always come first. I'll pray for your daughter to come back to you. I was about to close the app when a new comment popped up. It was from my cousin Mary. Aunt Linda, are you seriously playing the victim? You left Lily alone in the hospital after her car accident to go on a vacation she paid for. You took Rose instead of supporting your injured daughter. We all know what really happened. And then the floodgates opened. More relatives chimed in, revealing the truth. How I had supported my parents for a year while Rose refused to lift a finger. How I had planned the Paris trip as a gift, and how they visited me in the hospital while my own parents were off touring Europe. The post disappeared 3 days later, but by then the screenshots had already spread like wildfire through the family group chat. Mom's attempt to paint herself as the victim had completely backfired. 4 months after the accident, I walked into my office without my cane for the first time. Every step was steady, my head held high. The long months of physical therapy had paid off. I was finally back to normal, maybe even stronger than before. I expected a quiet day, maybe a few casual greetings by the coffee machine. Instead, I walked into the break room to find my entire team gathered around my desk, all smiles. A massive cake sat in the middle of the celebration. "Welcome back, Lily!" They cheered in unison. I stopped in my tracks, my breath catching as I took in the cake. 3 beautiful tiers of vanilla and chocolate, adorned with delicate fondant flowers. On top, a small figurine of a woman standing tall. My eyes welled up with tears. "You guys," I began, my voice thick with emotion, but the words caught in my throat. Karine immediately pulled me into a warm hug as Nick started cutting the cake. "Oh, and this came for you," Brittany said, handing me an envelope. It was from the insurance company. I opened it right there, surrounded by my work family, and nearly dropped it when I saw the settlement amount. There were more zeros than I'd expected. That night, sitting in my apartment with a piece of leftover cake, I opened my laptop and began browsing travel sites. The luxury hotel in Paris I had once booked popped up in my search results. Without hesitation, I checked availability for 4 months from now. "Single room this time," I murmured to myself, smiling as I clicked Book Now. Next, I booked the tours I had planned before the same ones, but this time designed for a solo traveler: the cheese tour, the wine tasting, the private guide through the ancient ruins. I booked them all. This time, everything would be exactly what I wanted. No compromises. My phone buzzed, another attempt from my family. A text from Mom, "We miss you," a voicemail from Dad, an email from Rose. Earlier that week, they had sent expensive flowers to my apartment, but I had thrown them straight into the dumpster. The last message came from an unknown number. "Lily, it's Mom. Please talk to us. We're still family." I deleted it without a second thought. I turned back to my laptop, watching the confirmation emails roll in. Hotel, tours, flights. This time, there was no anxiety, no guilt. I wasn't planning for anyone else's expectations. I wasn't trying to make anyone else happy. I felt nothing but excitement. I moved my laptop aside and walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights. 3 more months, and I would be walking the streets of Paris, eating at cafes, visiting museums, making memories my memories, on my terms. Another buzz. A call from an unknown number. Probably another family member. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I closed my laptop and smiled. I opened my photo gallery and deleted the old family pictures I had held onto for so long. It was time for new photos, new memories, new adventures. Sometimes, the family you choose, friends, co-workers, even kind strangers who become more than strangers, matters more than the family you're born into. I'd learned that the hard way, but standing there, planning my solo trip, I knew one thing for sure: I would never forget it. What do you do when the family you've always tried to support turns their back on you in your time of need? When your own parents choose a vacation over your recovery and your sister, who hasn't contributed a penny to the family in over a year, gets the trip you've planned and paid for? Lily worked tirelessly to support her family, to make sure they had everything they needed. She sacrificed her own dreams and paid their bills, even when her sister Rose refused to get a job, and her parents seemed to take her generosity for granted. But when Lily was injured in a car accident, she thought her family would rally around her. Instead, they took the trip she had planned for them, leaving her alone in the hospital to fend for herself. So, Lily made a choice. She would stop enabling their selfishness. She canceled everything: the trip, the tours, the flights. What they had done to her was unforgivable, and for the first time, she decided to prioritize herself. When they desperately reached out from their failed trip, Lily didn't feel the need to answer. She had nothing left to give. What would you have done in Lily's shoes? Would you have kept giving, or would you have finally chosen yourself? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that make you think.